March 21, 2025, at the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, Erlinda Avila, 97 years old, received the Congressional Gold Medal. She was just 15 in 1943, a Navajo girl, small enough to rivet B-25 Mitchell bombers from inside the wings, where grown men couldn't even fit. 310,000 women just like her built an astonishing 65% of America's aircraft. The Luftwaffe never knew that teenage girls were building the weapons that destroyed them. Goering's intelligence reported in April 1944 that American P-51 Mustangs exhibited a level of precision that they simply could not replicate. They analyzed captured aircraft meticulously, and they found welder identification marks. Code PM847, Patricia McCarthy, 19 years old, from Pittsburgh. Her weld tolerances, a mere 0.04% failure rate. Germany's best, 3%. Today, we reveal what enemy intelligence missed, and why German attempts to copy American fighters failed so catastrophically. 11:47 p.m., April 23, 1943, Berlin. Reichsmarshal Hermann Goering held a classified metallurgy report. His hands trembled, not from fear of Allied bombing, but from something far worse. The report analyzed a captured P-51B Mustang, serial number 43-12434, shot down over France on March 18th. Luftwaffe engineers spent 34 days disassembling every component, and what they discovered broke their confidence, completely shattered it. The wing spars exhibited weld quality that was impossible to achieve. Zero microscopic stress fractures, zero oxidation inconsistencies, zero thermal warping. The fuel tanks, manufactured in Buffalo, New York, showed tolerances of 0.001 inches. Goering's engineers needed 0.015 inches, minimum, and they couldn't understand why. The answer was in a name, stamped inside the left wing panel. JT-562, Jane Tucker. From rural Linville, Alabama. She was 18 years old in 1943. She left her family farm with her mother and sister, took a train to Mobile, and started welding Liberty ships. Then, she transferred to aircraft assembly. She worked 10-hour shifts, 6 days a week. Her supervisor, a grizzled shipyard veteran named Frank Morrison, couldn't believe it. This teenager from Alabama could weld aluminum alloy with precision. That matched Swiss watchmakers. He asked her once, "How did you learn this?" She said, "I didn't learn it. I just feel where the metal wants to go." That answer would have terrified German command if they'd heard it, because what Jane described wasn't technique taught in engineering schools. It was intuition developed through repetition, and repetition was America's secret weapon. Not just one Jane Tucker, but 310,000 women, welding, riveting, assembling, each one doing the same task, 800 times per shift, month after month. The muscle memory became neurological. Their hands knew tolerances that their minds couldn't even calculate, and this created a manufacturing consistency that German intelligence analysts called mathematically impossible. Let me show you what that meant in combat. September 12, 1944, 2:14 p.m., 28,000 feet over Hanover, Germany. Lieutenant James Harrison, 357th Fighter Group, flying P-51D Mustang, number 44-13761, built in Inglewood, California in April 1944. Final assembly, done by 8 women, average age 22. Harrison's aircraft took direct hits from 2 Messerschmitt Bf-109s, 20mm cannon rounds, punched through the left wing, shredded the aileron control cables. Any normal aircraft would have entered an uncontrollable spin. Harrison's Mustang didn't. The wing spar, welded by Martha Chen, 24, from San Francisco, absorbed the impact force without catastrophic failure. The fuel tanks, sealed by Dorothy Williams, 19, from Detroit, didn't rupture, despite the penetration. Harrison made it back to base, landed on one wheel, and walked away. German pilot Franz Halder, who shot Harrison's plane, filed his report at 6:32 p.m. that same day. He wrote, "I confirm 3 direct hits. Wing structure should have failed. Pilot should have died." But the American fighter continued controlled flight for 47 minutes. This defies material science. I request immediate analysis of American manufacturing methods. That request sat on desks in Berlin for 8 weeks. By the time Luftwaffe metallurgists read it, the war had already turned, because Martha Chen and Dorothy Williams weren't anomalies. They were the standard. Here's what German intelligence discovered when they finally analyzed American production in detail. Report dated November 3rd, 1944. Classified Geheime Reichssache. Secret Reich matter. The document landed on Albert Speer's desk, Minister of Armaments. Inside, photographs of 14 different American aircraft factories, detailed analysis of assembly line procedures, and one conclusion that Speer underlined 3 times in red ink. American women workers demonstrate precision consistency. 40% superior to our trained male workforce. This is not attributable to skill. This is attributable to scale. They have transformed aircraft assembly into a repeatable process. We cannot compete. Speer was right, but he didn't understand why. The secret wasn't just scale, it was diversity of background. Erlinda Avila, the Navajo teenager, riveting B-25 bombers, brought traditional beadwork precision to metal joining, her tribal techniques. It passed down through generations, gave her hand-eye coordination that German engineers trained for years to develop. She never thought about tolerances. She just made every rivet feel right. And when you're installing 4,000 rivets per day, that feeling, it becomes measurable perfection. Jane Tucker, the Alabama farm girl, brought cotton sewing precision to aluminum welding. She'd spent childhood summers helping her mother alter dresses by hand. Those fine motor skills, developed threading needles in dim light, translated directly to torch control. She could hold a weld puddle at an exact temperature for 47 seconds without variation. German welders couldn't sustain 22 seconds. And the difference between 22 and 47 seconds was the difference between a wing that failed at 6G stress and a wing that sustained 9G. In combat, that 3G difference meant life or death. Now let me show you what that precision created in the hands of American pilots. Let's talk about the P-47 Thunderbolt, Republic Aviation, Farmingdale, New York, final assembly. 60% female workforce by August 1943. The P-47 was a monster, 8 tons fully loaded. Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine producing 2,800 horsepower, 850 caliber machine guns, 2,500 pounds of bombs. It was built like a flying tank, and German pilots feared it for one reason that had nothing to do with firepower. The P-47 could take catastrophic damage and keep flying. March 28, 1944, Captain Robert Johnson, 56th Fighter Group, flying a P-47D Thunderbolt over Berlin. He was jumped by Focke-Wulf FW-190s, took 20mm cannon hits to the engine cowling, right wing, fuselage, and tail. His aircraft absorbed over 200 bullet holes. The canopy shattered, shrapnel hit his face, oil covered his windscreen. And he flew that crippled Thunderbolt 450 miles back to England, landed safely. The ground crew counted the damage. They said this aircraft should never have made it 45 miles, let alone 450. Johnson said, "I don't know who built this plane, but I owe them my life." You know who built that plane? Wing Assembly, Margaret Sullivan, 31, from Philadelphia. Fuselage, Dorothy Hayes, 26, Baltimore. Engine mounts, Patricia O'Brien, 22, Boston. Electrical systems, Ruth Tanaka, 28, Los Angeles, a Japanese-American, working while her cousins were in internment camps. Control surfaces, Betty Schultz, 35, Milwaukee, a mother of 3, every one of them riveted, welded, assembled with the knowledge that some young man's life depended on their precision, and when they heard stories like Johnson's, they cried with pride, because they knew their hands had saved him. German Engineering Command couldn't comprehend this. They analyzed captured P-47 Thunderbolts with obsessive detail. They measured every component, tested every alloy, disassembled every system, and they kept arriving at the same conclusion. American aircraft are over-engineered, wastefully redundant, inefficiently heavy. Our fighters are more elegant, more efficient, more scientifically optimized. But the Americans kept winning, and German pilots kept dying. And finally, in February 1945, a Luftwaffe engineering report stated the truth that shattered their worldview. American redundancy is not waste, it is wisdom. They build aircraft that protect pilots. We build aircraft that perform specifications. The difference is philosophy, and we are losing because of it. That philosophy came from the women building these aircraft, because these women had brothers, sons, husbands, boyfriends flying combat. When Martha Chen welded a fuel tank, she pictured her brother Tommy flying over Germany. When Jane Tucker riveted a wing spar, she thought about her cousin Jack dodging flak over France. When Erlinda Avila installed hydraulic lines in a B-25 bomber, she imagined Navajo code talkers in the Pacific relying on that bomber for support. This wasn't abstract engineering, this was personal survival. And that emotional investment created quality control that no German regulation could match. Let me give you numbers that prove this. American aircraft production, 1943, 85,198 total aircraft. German aircraft production, 1943, 24,807 total aircraft. America built 3.5 times more planes. But here's what matters. American aircraft combat loss rate due to mechanical failure, 1.2%. German aircraft combat loss rate due to mechanical failure, 8.7%. That means German pilots were 7 times more likely to die because their own aircraft failed them. And why did German aircraft fail? Because they were built by slave labor and exhausted factory workers under constant bombing stress. American aircraft succeeded because they were built by free women who had every reason to care. Now let's talk about the P-51 Mustang, the fighter that won the air war over Europe. North American Aviation, Inglewood, California. Final assembly line, 68% female workforce by October 1943. The Mustang's superpower wasn't speed, though it hit 437 cm, wasn't maneuverability, though it could outturn a Bf-109. The Mustang's real advantage was range. With drop tanks, it could fly 1,650 miles. That meant American bombers finally had fighter escort all the way to Berlin and back. And that changed everything. But here's what the Luftwaffe discovered, to their horror. Those drop tanks, manufactured by Buffalo Tank Corporation, New York, were engineering masterpieces. German engineers analyzed captured tanks. The fuel bladders used self-sealing technology that stopped bullet holes from leaking. The mounting brackets sustained 12G stress without failure. The jettison mechanism worked flawlessly at temperatures from -40 to +120 Fahrenheit, and inside one tank, they found a name stenciled in small letters: PM 847, Patricia McCarthy, 19. Pittsburgh. Patricia worked third shift, midnight to 8 a.m. She welded aluminum fuel bladders in a factory that ran 24 hours a day. The work was tedious. Same weld pattern 340 times per night, same inspection process, same quality check, month after month, but she never cut corners, because her boyfriend Eddie was a B-17 ball turret gunner, and she knew those Mustangs escorting his bomber needed perfect fuel tanks. One leak at 25,000 feet meant a fighter going down. And a fighter going down meant bombers dying. And bombers dying meant Eddie dying. So she welded every tank like Eddie's life depended on it. Because it did. Eddie made it home. July 1945. Purple Heart. Distinguished Flying Cross. 35 combat missions. He married Patricia in August. And when people asked him what won the war, he always said, "The women back home, they built everything, and they built it right." German intelligence never understood that connection. They analyzed American aircraft as engineering products. They should have analyzed them as love letters, because that's what they were. Every rivet driven by a mother thinking of her son. Every weld completed by a wife imaging her husband. Every inspection passed by a sister picturing her brother. This was the arsenal of democracy in action. Not factories, families. Now let me show you what happened when German command realized they were beaten, not by soldiers, but by teenage girls they'd never heard of. December 15th, 1944, Reichsmarschall Göring met with Hitler at the Wolf's Lair. The topic, aircraft production. Göring presented latest intelligence from captured American factories. The report included photographs of assembly lines staffed entirely by women. Some appeared to be teenagers. Hitler saw the pictures. He went silent for 47 seconds. Then he said, and this is documented in stenographer notes, "We are being defeated by children and women while our men die on frozen steppes. This is the final humiliation." Göring had no response, because it was true. But it wasn't humiliation, it was arithmetic. America had mobilized its entire population. Germany had not. America trusted women with precision work. Germany did not. America invested in training, safety equipment, and fair wages. Germany used slave labor, and the results were measurable. By January 1945, American factories were producing 500 aircraft per day. Germany managed 112, and the quality gap was even worse. American aircraft had 94% mission-ready rates. German aircraft, 61%. That 33% difference represented hundreds of fighters that couldn't fly because of manufacturing defects, and pilots sitting idle while American bombs destroyed their airfields. The end came quickly after that. March 1945, Luftwaffe Command issued final directive to remaining fighter groups. Avoid engagement with P-51 Mustangs whenever possible. Prioritize survival over victory. This was surrender in all but name. German pilots, some of the most skilled in history, were being ordered to run from American fighters. Not because American pilots were better trained, though many were, but because American aircraft were better built by women, by teenagers, by mothers and daughters and sisters whose names would take 80 years to honor. Which brings us back to March 21st, 2025, that National World War II Museum ceremony. 18 women, average age 97, wearing Congressional Gold Medals, the nation's highest civilian honor, awarded to 5 million women collectively, but only 18 could attend, because time has taken the rest. Jane Tucker, 97, stood at the podium. She spoke for 2 minutes. Her voice was steady. She said, "We didn't think we were heroes. We thought we were doing our jobs. But when we heard that boys were coming home because of what we built, that made every 10-hour shift worth it. We built freedom, and we'd do it again." The audience gave a standing ovation that lasted 4 minutes. Veterans in the crowd saluted. Grandchildren helped their grandmothers stand to accept the honor. Some women cried. Others smiled with quiet dignity. They'd earned 8 decades ago. But here's what most people don't know about that ceremony. The Congressional Gold Medal legislation took 14 years to pass. First introduced in 2010. Blocked repeatedly. Some lawmakers said recognizing women workers would diminish combat veterans. Others said it was too expensive. Others said these women were just doing factory jobs, nothing special. It wasn't until 2024 that the bill finally passed. And by then, 97% of the women it honored were dead. Erlinda Avila, approaching 101 years old in April 2025, is one of the last survivors. When reporters asked her how it felt to finally be recognized, she said, "Better late than never. But it would have been nice to see this when my friends were alive to receive it." That's the tragedy. Not that recognition came, that it came 80 years too late. Because these women didn't just build aircraft. They proved that American industrial might wasn't about money or machines. It was about people, free people, people who had skin in the game, people who cared about outcomes, and people who brought their whole selves to work. Farm girl precision, beadwork artistry, sewing muscle memory, mother's protective instinct. These weren't factory workers. These were craftswomen, applying generational skills to save a generation. German intelligence understood this by late 1944. But by then, understanding didn't matter. The mathematics had already decided 310,000 American women versus German slave labor. 65% female workforce versus exhausted men under bombing stress. 0.04% failure rates versus 3% failure rates. 94% mission ready versus 61% mission ready. Every one of those numbers represented lives saved. American pilots coming home, German pilots not. And the women who built American aircraft knew it. That's why they cried when they heard stories like Captain Johnson's P-47 Thunderbolt taking 200 hits and flying home. That's why they worked through exhaustion. That's why they never cut corners. Because someone's son was flying what they built, and they were building it right. Let me show you what that meant to one family. Martha Chen, San Francisco, 24 years old, welding wing spars for P-51 Mustangs. Her brother Ethan, 21, flew B-17 bombers over Germany. 8th Air Force, 91st Bombardment Group. Martha worked third shift so she could write letters to Ethan during breaks. She told him, "I'm welding fuel tanks today. If you see a Mustang with MC-412 stamped inside the drop tank, that's mine. Come home safe." Ethan wrote back February 14th, 1944. "Sis, today we had 4 Mustangs escorting us to Brunswick. One of them took flak protecting our formation, kept flying. Brought us home. I'm alive because someone built that plane right. Maybe it was you." It was. Serial number 436315. Built Inglewood, November 1943. Drop tanks. MC-4112, Martha Chen's welds. Flown by Captain Charles McGee, Tuskegee Airmen, 332nd Fighter Group. On February 11, 1944, McGee's Mustang took 37mm flak hits, protecting the 91st Bombardment Group. The drop tank punctured, self-sealing bladders activated, leak stopped within 8 seconds. McGee escorted the bombers to target and home. 0 losses that day. Ethan Chen survived the war. 31 missions. Came home May 1945. First thing he did, went to Martha's factory, asked to see the assembly line, found her supervisor, said, "My sister saved my life." The supervisor nodded, said, "She saves lives every night, 8 fuel tanks per shift. That's 8 pilots coming home. Martha doesn't know it, but she's a hero." Martha died in 2019, age 99. Never met Charles McGee. Never knew her fuel tank protected the bombers carrying her brother. Never knew Ethan's survival was connected to her midnight welds in California. The connection was invisible. Until researchers in 2024 cross-referenced B-17 formation records with P-51 serial numbers and finally matched Martha's MC-412 with McGee's aircraft on February 11, 1944. The day Ethan almost died. The day Martha's work saved him, without either of them knowing. That's the power of what these women built: invisible safety, anonymous protection, love translated into aluminum and steel. This is the story that Congressional Gold Medal ceremony honored, not heroism in the traditional sense, but heroism nonetheless, because every rivet driven correctly was an act of love. Every weld completed perfectly was an act of defiance. Every quality inspection passed was an act of faith. Faith that precision mattered, that craftsmanship mattered, that women mattered, and 80 years later, that faith was finally validated. The Luftwaffe never knew the names: Erlinda Avila, Jane Tucker, Patricia McCarthy, Martha Chen, Dorothy Williams, Ruth Tanaka, Betty Schultz, Margaret Sullivan, 3 on 10,000 women whose identities were stamped inside wings and fuselages, but never celebrated publicly, until now, until 2025, when 18 of them, average age 97, some in wheelchairs, some with oxygen tanks, some helped by grandchildren, stood in that museum plaza and received what they'd earned 8 decades ago: the nation's gratitude, delivered late, but delivered. And when you see a restored P-51 Mustang flying at an air show, remember this: inside that left wing, there's probably a welder identification mark, maybe PM-847, maybe JT-562, maybe EA-103. Some teenage girl from Pittsburgh or Alabama or Arizona who spent 1943 making sure that wing would sustain 9G stress at 28,000 feet, so that some pilot she'd never meet could make it home to a family that would never know her name. That's what the March 2025 ceremony was really honoring: anonymous sacrifice, invisible precision, the women who built victory, one rivet at a time. Let me tell you one more story that explains why this matters today. Tom Riley Aviation. September 2025, they announced a 36-month restoration project for a P-51D Mustang, award-winning restorers. When they removed the wing skin from serial number 44-72948, they found something inside: a small metal tag riveted to the internal structure, hand-stamped EA-103, Erlinda Avila, and next to it, in pencil on the aluminum spar, someone had written, "To whoever flies this, come home safe." Navajo blessing symbols followed. Tom Riley called Erlinda, told her they'd found her work, 82 years later, still perfect, no corrosion, no stress cracks, no failures. She cried on the phone, said she remembered that aircraft, remembered the day she stamped EA-103 inside the wing, remembered writing that blessing. She was 16 years old, and she'd hoped someone would see it someday, would know she cared. 82 years. That's how long it took for her message to reach its audience. But it reached. That's the power of what these women built. Not just aircraft, connection across time. A teenage Navajo girl in 1943 reaching forward to tell a future pilot, "I built this for you. Come home." And that pilot, whoever flew 44-729-48 in combat, did come home, because EA-103 made sure the wing wouldn't fail. And now, in 2025, we know her name, we know her story. We know she was 16. We know she was Navajo. We know she blessed that aircraft. We know she cared. And that knowledge honors every one of the 310,000 women who did the same. You just discovered the classified truth about American air superiority in World War II. These aren't dusty archive statistics. These are real stories of your grandmother's generation, the women who welded, riveted, and assembled the weapons that won the war. The women who brought farm girl precision, tribal artistry, and mother's love to industrial production. The women who proved that American strength wasn't technology, it was trust. Trust in women, trust in diversity, trust in people who had every reason to care. This history was buried for 80 years, not in classified files, in plain sight. Because nobody thought factory work was heroic. Nobody thought precision was dramatic. Nobody thought women's contributions mattered enough to celebrate. Until March 21st, 2025, when 18 survivors, average age 97, stood in New Orleans and received Congressional Gold Medals, recognition that should have come in 1946. When all 5 million women were alive to receive it. When Erlinda's friends could have stood beside her. When Jane Tucker's co-workers could have shared the honor. When Patricia McCarthy could have told her children she was more than just a factory worker. She was a craftsman, a lifesaver, a victory builder. But it didn't. So we honor them now, and we preserve their stories. Because corporate documentaries won't tell these stories. They don't sell. They don't have explosions or dogfights or dramatic music. They have teenage girls welding fuel tanks at midnight. Farm girls riveting wing spars for 10 hours straight. Navajo women blessing bombers with ancient symbols. These stories aren't cinematic. They're foundational. They're the reason America won. And they're disappearing. Erlinda Avila is 101 in April 2025. Jane Tucker is 97. How many more years do we have to thank them? Super thanks isn't just channel support. It's you saying, I honor the greatest generation. It tells YouTube, history matters. It keeps these stories alive for your grandchildren. Because when Erlinda and Jane and the other 18 survivors are gone, all we'll have left are these stories. And if nobody preserves them, they die too. You're not just a viewer. You're a keeper of history. You're making sure that 50 years from now, someone can watch this and know what EA 103 meant, what JT 562 achieved, what PM 847 accomplished. That's not support, that's mission, and we need you. Now let me ask you this. The 2025 Congressional Gold Medal ceremony honored 18 Rosie the Riveters, 18 out of 5 million. Do you think all 5 million women deserve monuments? Not collective recognition, individual monuments, names on walls, like the Vietnam Memorial, every one of the 310,000 women who built aircraft, every one of the 4.7 million who built ships, tanks, ammunition, uniforms, all of them immortalized. Comment Rosie if you agree, because that's the conversation America needs to have. We build monuments for battles. We should build monuments for builders. And if your grandmother, great-grandmother or great-great-grandmother worked in the defense industry during World War II, drop her story in the comments. My audience has shared incredible histories. We've connected families who never knew their relatives worked on the same assembly line. We've found identification marks in restored aircraft that match viewers' family names. This isn't just history. This is living memory. And you might be carrying part of it. Share it, because once it's gone forever. Remember that March 21st. The 2025 ceremony. Remember Erlinda Avila receiving the Congressional Gold Medal at 97 years old. Remember Jane Tucker saying, "We built freedom." Remember the 14 years it took for that legislation to pass? Remember that 97% of the women it honored were already dead. Now you understand what they built. Not just P-51 Mustangs and P-47 Thunderbolts and B-25 Mitchells. They built American victory. They built pilot survival. They built precision that German engineering couldn't match. They built love into aluminum and steel, and they built it so well that 82 years later, restorers open wings and find perfection. Zero corrosion, zero failures, just EA-103 and a Navajo blessing saying, "Come home safe." That's the legacy. That's what 2025 finally honored. That's what your freedom flies on. The wings built by teenage girls, the fuel tanks welded by farm girls, the fuselages riveted by mothers. The electrical systems installed by Japanese Americans working while their families were in camps. The control surfaces assembled by women who believed precision mattered, who believed craftsmanship mattered, who believed they mattered. And 80 years later, we finally agreed they mattered. They won the war. They built victory, one rivet at a time. Your freedom flies on these wings. Never forget who built them. Never forget who paid that price. Never forget the greatest generation. The women who welded, the women who riveted, the women who assembled, the women whose names were stamped inside aircraft and forgotten for 80 years. Until now, until 2025, until we said, "We see you, we honor you, we remember." Erlinda Avila, Jane Tucker, Patricia McCarthy, and 310,000 others whose names we'll never know, but whose work saved the world. This is their story. This is our history. This is why March 2025 mattered. Better late than never. But it would have been nice when they were all alive to hear it. Subscribe if you want more stories that honor those who served, more history that preserves the legacy of the greatest generation, more truths that corporate documentaries won't tell, because this isn't entertainment. This is remembrance, and we do it every week. For them, this is for you, for the grandchildren who deserve to know what their great-great-grandmothers built. We extend our sincere gratitude for watching. Thank you for honoring their memory. Thank you for remembering their contributions. We'll be seeing you in the next video. Until then, take care and keep their legacy alive.